Hi guys, welcome back. I know it's been a little while. I've been really busy and I haven't been able to post much because I haven't had time to edit. This is going to be our kind of combined November TBR and October wrap-up video. So we're going to start with my wrap-up because why not? It is only October 30th, so there's a chance that I finish a book tomorrow, but I have my doubts because tomorrow is going to be pretty hectic. So yeah, but I will just tell you about the books that I did read, and then if I end up reading it, I'll insert a clip of me talking about it later. So let's get started with that. So far this month I've read 3,397 pages. I read a total of 9 books. I had an average rating of 4.25 stars, which is pretty good, I would say. And I ended up reading the most fantasy this month, which is a little different than the past months. I've always been a big romance reader, but this month the fantasy has just been gripping me, so I'm kind of happy that we have some switch ups there. I did, however, only read 3 out of the 6 books on my TBR. I'm in the middle of the fourth book of my TBR, but I don't think I'm gonna finish it before the end of the month, so not the best TBR month, to be honest, but I do think that there were quite a lot of books that I maybe were not in the mood to read, that were genres that I wasn't necessarily wanting to read. I also do think that this month was a little crazy because I had the flu for about a week and a half, so I was like catching up on schoolwork. I wasn't really reading while I was sick, so there was a lot going on. I'm not mad about what I read this month. I'm still really ahead on my reading goal, and I enjoyed a lot of the books that I did read, but I'm a little sad about not finishing my TBR, but it's okay because I didn't think I was going to be able to, so I read half of it, which is pretty good, I would say. The first book that I read this month was Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I ended up giving this a 5-star. This was in one of the reading vlogs. This actually I think is in the reading vlog that I never posted, so that will probably be up sometime soon and you'll be able to see me talk more about it and my experience reading it. But I loved this book so much. It is quite long, but it didn't feel long. I really flew through it. I loved the magic in this, and this book really tied the magic system with our real world, which I really appreciated. Like, they kind of use the magic as a metaphor for a lot of systemic problems in our world. I say our world, it's really more America, so US girlies, that's kind of what this is about a little bit. There's also some grief in here, and the plot twists of this were impeccable. Like, the entire ending was so good. There were some really great scenes where I just sobbed my heart out. Like, I ate this up, and I feel like this was just so enlightening also to see what it's like, or not to, I mean, I don't know if this is everyone's experience. Obviously, this is related to the author's experience, but I'm not going to speak for everyone, and I don't think she is saying she's speaking for everyone, but it definitely gives you a window into seeing what it is like to live as a Black woman in the US, and specifically where she is. I believe she's in South Carolina. So yeah, I really loved it though. The fantasy elements of this were really good. I loved the characters and everything, so did end up giving this a 5-star. Started out my month with a bang. Then I read Night of the Witch by Sarah Rash and Beth Revis. This one I was honestly really surprised by. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. This is about a witch named Fritzi. It's kind of set in Germany during the witch trials, but some of the witches are real, is kind of the basis of it. And the guy is Otto. He is a witch hunter, but he only works for them to try to like take down the whole thing from the inside. So they end up working together, and there's a lot more that goes on that I'm not gonna get into because I don't want to spoil anything, but I ate this up. I haven't seen anyone talk about this, so I was surprised when it was really good. I honestly just bought it because sprayed edges and because it came with goodies. I've talked about this so much in like a couple of different videos of mine, I feel like, but that was kind of just my reason for buying it. It wasn't anything based on I also do love witch and witch hunter romance, so that was kind of also a reason for buying it. And it generally just ate. Like, I loved it. It was so good. The world was incredibly written. I feel like this is another book that gives you a window into what a certain time period was like for the people living in it. In this case, it was Germany during the witch trials, which I think is in like the 1700s or so, but I could be totally wrong. Like, I'm not a historian, don't quote me on that. But I loved this so much, and the fantasy elements also amazing. I know that the sequels just come out and it's just a duology, so hopefully I'll read that soon. However, it came out in paperback first and it doesn't have nice bright edges, so I want to wait for it came out in hardcover first. I want to wait for the paperback to come out and then I will buy it and read it. I might read it on my Kindle if I really want to know what happens in this duology, but it is a lot shorter than this book, I would say, so I don't know what's gonna happen in it, but I might find out soon. So yeah, this one ended up being 4.5. Then I ended up reading Project Hail Mary, which I did finish while I was sick, so I kind of read this over the course of like a week and a half maybe, which sounds normal for most people, but for me, I usually read a book within, my average for finishing a book is I'll finish a book every 3 to 4 days, so having like 10 days, taking 10 days to finish this was a little much. But I ended up giving this 4.75. I loved this. I feel like it didn't fully give me a 5-star feeling, but I'm definitely going to be reading more of Andy Weir's books. This was so good. I feel like this was everything I like about science and fiction, and it's just, I want to say this is basically about, I don't really want to say much about what it's about because I want you to like be able to be immersed in the story, but this is essentially about a scientist who wakes up on a spaceship and doesn't know why he's there, but he's slowly having like memory flashbacks of how he ended up there, what his mission is, and and he's trying to accomplish all that while in space, while also trying to remember everything that has led up to this point. I ate it up. I want to say I didn't read a lot of sci-fi when I was younger, but sci-fi was definitely one of my top, like YA sci-fi was one of my favorite genres when I was a kid. Loved the Lunar Chronicles, which I know is more fantasy sci-fi leaning, but the Illuminae series, that one's definitely sci-fi in my opinion, and I loved that so much. But after that, I couldn't really find much more good YA sci-fi, so this was kind of my first foray into adult sci-fi, and I loved it. So there definitely was a lot of science in this, obviously. Some science fiction is more just like you're in space and that's the science fiction part of it. This one definitely has a lot of science stuff in it, but if you like science, I would definitely recommend this. Even if you don't, I would still recommend this because it was just a good read overall. So yeah, 4.75. Then I started a reread of Harry Potter, so I read the first Harry Potter book, and I hadn't read this probably since elementary school, maybe. I started this reread because I felt myself getting in a slump and I just needed something fast and, easy to read, and I thought a reread of a childhood series would be good for that, and I've seen so many people talking about Harry Potter. And the reason I mainly decided to go with Harry Potter out of everything was that I read Harry Potter books 1 through 4. Then I stopped because it was starting to get a little too old for me at the time. I was probably, in like 2nd grade. So I was like, okay, this is getting a little much. Like, why are people falling in love? This is weird, So I revisited it later and finished the series start to finish. But the thing is I only remember 1 to 4. I don't remember the last, couple books. And it bothers me. I want to know what happens at the end. So I decided to reread it and started with the first one, obviously. I ended up giving it 3.75. It was very nostalgic. I do, however, feel like I remembered the entire plot of this. But it was still such a good read, and I love the Hogwarts world. I think when I was a kid, I didn't appreciate it enough, and I do now. It was so magical and just atmospheric and very fall. I definitely loved it, and I see why so many kids were giant Harry Potter fans. I don't know if I would say I was a giant Harry Potter fan, but I definitely was a fan. I know that I liked Keeper of the Lost Cities a lot more. Don't really know why that is. Maybe it's just because it follows a girl character instead of a guy, but I don't really know. But yeah, I ended up giving that one 3.75. Did enjoy it, and Dumbledore's quotes. He always has such good quotes at the end of each book, and they always get me like teary. So yeah, I just really liked being back in that world. Then I read A Shadow Crown by Melissa Blair. This is the second book of the Halfling saga, which the first one is A Broken Blade, and I read that one last month, so I decided to get through this one. I will say, I can't tell if it's me or if it's the book, but I was kind of in a slump when I started this, and so it took me a while to get into it, but like I said, that could be a me getting in a slump type of thing and not this book type of thing. But I ended up giving this 3.75 also. I feel like it was pretty good. It had a lot of the same characters as last time, and I love those characters. I would say my one gripe with it is that the magic system in this world is very complex, and I feel like the author had fully developed every part of the world. Like, it feels like she knows what's going on in every aspect of this world. It just doesn't feel like she's explaining it very well. So I feel a little bit confused at parts and a little bit lost. And I know I should be understanding what's going on because she makes it seem like you should understand it. But I think she just leaves out some crucial things that she assumes you know because she knows them in her head, but she doesn't explicitly write them down well enough for me to understand what's going on, if that makes sense. I still would recommend this series, and I still am enjoying it, and I probably will continue it. I just don't know how soon I'm going to want to be picking up the next book, and I will just say, if fantasy kind of confuses you, this is probably not the fantasy you want to reach for, because, like I said, she doesn't fully explain a lot of the things that you kind of need to know to understand what's going on. You can kind of grasp the general idea of, like, what's going on, but you don't get the full impact and meaning of it, because it's not fully explained. So we'll say take my review with a grain of salt, because like I said, the whole slump thing might have affected that, but I did end up giving this 3.75. I still enjoyed it. I love the characters in this world, and the couple in this book, I love them. So yeah, that was my review of this one. Then I read the next Harry Potter book, which is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I ended up giving this one a 4. I love Dobby, just want to put that out there. He's like one of my favorites. I don't know why, he's just like so endearing somehow. But yeah, I also really liked this book. I feel like obviously, as you can see with the star rating, I enjoyed it more than the first one. I think the plot of this one started to get a little more complex. I will say I remembered some elements of this, but I think I didn't remember some of the key parts of this as well, so that was also fun to see, something that I didn't remember fully, and I think that contributed to me liking it more, is that there was more element of mystery in this. But I also really enjoyed this one. It was really good, and like I said, the whole atmosphere in the world, I just am in love with it, and the characters also amazing. I think the movie adaptations are probably some of the best book to movie adaptations maybe ever, and those, having seen the movies before, having those characters in my head also kind of contributes to me enjoying the books, I think, because it's makes me feel more like the world is real because I've seen people in this world, you know? So yeah, I ended up giving that one 4. Then I totally randomly, this is the same day as I read Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna pick up the Happy Ever After playlist, and I binged it in that one night and absolutely sobbed. I love Abby Jimenez so much. Like, I read The Friend Zone earlier this year, and that was the only book of hers that I had ever read, and after reading it, I was like, this is my new favorite author. Auto-buy author, favorite author, 5-star author, and this book was no exception, even though it's only the second one. I rated this one a 5-star too. I absolutely sobbed during like the entire last half of this book at first because I was just so heartbroken for the characters, and then at the very end I was obviously crying of happiness. I absolutely loved this. It was a total 5-star. Definitely gonna continue this little series. I think the last one is, I definitely own it. I can't remember the name of it right now. Friendzone is first, this one is second, and then there is a third one. I had to take a little break there because living in a dorm means things get loud sometimes. But I was talking about how much I love this book, because I do. And I will say, Sloane, the female main character of this book, I feel like I was already attached to her because she has a plotline that's featured in The Friend Zone, which is the book that comes before this. And after that, I was just like, once we got her perspective and we're getting her book, I was just so excited. I was invested from the get-go because I just love her so much because of her role in the first book. So yeah, and I just love their relationship. I loved everything about this, and I just binged it. I feel like Abby Jimenez books need to be binged in one sitting. You need to cry your heart out and rate them 5 stars after. That's just my opinion, but definitely try out reading her books. Do be wary if you want to read all of her books. I would recommend reading the series in order because otherwise you'll get some like plot things spoiled for you. At least with this kind of series, I would read The Friend Zone before reading this one. Then I read the third Harry Potter book, which is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. I liked this one so much. I think this is my favorite of the series so far. The plot was so good. Like, there were so many twists and turns, and I remembered some parts of it, but most of it was just so, like, not out of the blue, but like, it wasn't out of the blue in the story. It felt like it was built up to properly, but for me, because I didn't remember it, it was kind of out of the blue, if that makes sense. But this is the book where you get a lot of the like Marauders lore, and I kind of see why people are so obsessed with them, because if you've read this book, you know, but I understand the obsession now. Like, there's so much history there, and it's definitely not explained by the author, but there's so much that could be done with like what she tells us, I feel like. So yeah, I loved this whole book, and I'm excited to continue the series. This was the last Harry Potter book that I have read this month, so I definitely will be continuing it because, like I said, I need to know what happens at the end, but I'm just loving this whole reread, so I'm kind of taking my time with it a little bit. Last book I finished was The Testing Charade by Daniel Kretz. This one I read for one of my classes. It's about standardized testing, so I'm not going to go into like too much detail with this because obviously it was read for school, but I will say this is a nonfiction book. If you're looking for like an easy to understand explanation of all things standardized testing, this is kind of a good read, but it is very long and repetitive, so just be wary that there's going to be a lot of repeated evidence, repeated kind of points in this, so it can get a little long. But if you're more just looking for getting the information out of this, I would definitely recommend it because it's easy to understand. You might just have to like skim and skip a couple parts. So I ended up giving that one 3 stars. And I know most people don't rate nonfiction, but I think like the topic itself is interesting. I think he writes it well. It's just very long, and I think that's something that is on the author and it's not on the topic, so I think it's fair to give it a rating, if that makes sense. Like some books, like memoirs, I don't think it's fair to give it a rating because it's about someone's life, but an informative book like that, I think it's fair for me to give it a rating. So, but those were all the books that I finished this month, so now we're going to move on to picking my TBR for November, which I am super excited about. These are all the physical options I have left to read, so we'll go through them one by one and then we'll get into the TBR. The first one is Powerless. Like I said, I haven't been reading a lot of romance, but I feel like I'm getting more into a romancy mood, so I hopefully will be picking this up soon. I know it's friends to lovers and hockey player ex ballerina, so I'm really excited about reading it, and I just love this world. So the thing is though, is because I love her writing and her book so much, and I know what her writing is kind of like, I'm kind of waiting for me to be in the right mood to read this, and I just don't know if this is the time, even though I do want to read it so badly, but I want to give it its best chance for me to just be fully immersed, and I just don't know if that's the right month for it. But if it ends up on my TBR, it ends up on my TBR, and like I said, I'm kind of feeling a little bit more romancy than I was last month, so we'll see if I end up picking that one. Next is Morbidly Yours, which I kind of do want to read during the fall time. I know we're kind of getting past spooky season now, but I do want to read this during the fall time. Like I said about me not being in a romance mood, this is a romance, so that's kind of why I didn't pick it up before, but it's super short and I'm kind of looking forward to reading it, so I might try to pick this up this month. We'll see. Then we have Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn, which is the sequel to Legendborn. Look at those edges and tell me they're not gorgeous. I do want to get to this and continue the series. There were some things left unsaid or unexplained in the other book, and I know this is going to be a trilogy and the third one's not out yet, so that's kind of why I've been hesitant to read this, because if the plot twist and cliffhanger is crazy, then I'm going to be really sad waiting for the next one. But I do want to read this soon, and honestly I might be in the mood for this month, so we'll see. We've got Station 11, which was on my TBR for last month, but only because I had no other book to put on my TBR for the prompt. I don't think I'm in the mood for this quite yet. I've read one of her books recently, and they're the kind of books that you need to just be in the mood to read, and you need to have the time to sit and digest them. And so I think I want to put off reading this for a bit until I'm ready to get into it. But I will read this eventually, I promise. It just might not be this month. So, and the last one we have is Heavenbreaker, which I have bought this month, and it's by Sarah Wolf. As far as I know, it has a blurb by, don't want to butcher your name, I think it's Ziran J. Zhao, who wrote Iron Widow, and I love that book. If you're looking for something to tide over your Fourth Wing hangover, but that has a more badass female main character, definitely read Iron Widow. It also has dragons, kind of. But yeah, and this book is recommended by her, so I am excited to read it. As far as I can tell, it is Greek mythology based. It has beautiful sprayed edges and has a really powerful female main character who's just on a kind of revenge streak. So I'm excited about reading this one, so we'll see if I end up getting to this month. And I know this is going to be, I believe this is going to be a duology, and the next book is on the books to come out sometime in the next few years. So yeah, plus it's just so pretty. Like, look at that, it's just stunning. So if the book is beautiful, I'm gonna buy it. That's just something about me. If your book's pretty, it's probably gonna be on my bookshelf, whether or not I know anything about how good it is. I'm very excited to read this, but I do want to hold those I have with me, and I'm very excited to do this, so I feel like this will continue. So we're gonna do this one. I think I could also just lever to the refrigerator because it's quite long, but you know what? I'm gonna throw the TBR prompt thing out the window. I know I usually do prompts for my TBR, and to be honest, I did start doing the prompts, but I realized that the books that I have left to read physically, I have 5 of them, so I think I'm just gonna put all of these on my TBR so that I can hopefully finish them before I go home. And then the 6th book that I'll put on my TBR is gonna be Taming 7, just because I've been thinking about reading that for so long. And then we'll have, not necessarily on the TBR, but just on my radar is the rest of the Harry Potter series. So I know I've already talked about these, and Taming 7 I'm really excited about. It's part of the Boys of Tommen series. And then we also have the Harry Potter series, which I have also talked about a little bit. So these are just going to be the books that I am going to try to finish this month, and we'll see how many of them I end up getting through. But yeah, these plus the one that I'm in the middle of right now, which is Fear the Flames, which I would put a picture of on the screen, but I own it physically. I'm just too lazy to get the actual book. Here's the dust jacket. I'm going to try to finish this during November if I don't finish it in the next few days. So that is my October wrap-up plus my November TBR. Let me know if you've read any of these books that I have on my TBR, because I may need to be motivated to read some of them. So definitely let me know if you want me to read any of these in reading vlogs or anything. I can totally do that, and it'll motivate me to read them. So yeah, I hope you have a nice day. I hope you have a nice Halloween, or had a nice Halloween, because it's gonna be past by now, and I will see you soon.